There are so many things that you want to do. You want to start exercising, you want to paint more, you want to read more, but instead you're scrolling TikTok. You're reading bad hot takes on Twitter. You just feel like you cannot stop flushing your time down the literal toilet. If you can relate, this is the video that you need to watch. In it, I'm going to share a 5-step process that you can follow quite literally, step by step, to significantly reduce the amount of time that you are wasting. Before we even get into this 5-step process, we need to talk about why you're wasting so much time, objectively. There are Reddit threads galore of people talking about how they waste so much time and they are so filled with shame. Like, you can smell the shame in these threads. And the hill that I'll die on is that behavior change is much harder when it comes from a place of shame. But when you understand why you are wasting time from a brain-based, objective perspective, it's much easier to look at your behaviors from a place of curiosity. So that's where we're starting. So your brain at some point noticed that when you felt stressed, social media instantly made you feel better. So wired that pattern into your brain. It noticed that your overwhelm would disappear immediately as soon as you started watching TV. So now you have a little neural pathway that links overwhelm and TV, and so on and so forth. In all of these instances, your brain was operating out of self-protection. It saw that you were feeling an emotion that you didn't want to feel, and it was like, what can we do about this? I'm gonna create a habit for you. I like to think of the brain as like a helicopter parent. It's in a roundabout way trying to help you in a really unhelpful way. So now that we've sucked the shame out of wasting time, let's talk about the 5-step process that you can follow to move yourself from someone who wastes a lot of time to someone who spends a lot of time on the things that you actually want to be doing. Step number 1. So people that want to stop overeating or eating foods that don't feel good for them do this thing called mindful eating, and you've probably heard of it. This is related to wasting time. Just wait. These people don't restrict themselves. They eat pasta, they eat sweet treats, they eat bread, but they just pay a ton of attention to how those foods actually make them feel. They are so mindful of how those foods make them feel as they eat those foods that they notice immediately as soon as they feel full, and then they stop eating, even if they're eating sticky day pudding. And if they're just getting into mindful eating and they do overeat, they pay attention to how their body feels after they overeat to train their brain. Every time they get so mindful of how horrible it feels to eat a little too much, their brain starts to break the pattern of overeating, because it's like, oh hey, there's actually no reward in that habit. The reward part of the habit loop starts to die off. And when a reward doesn't exist for a habit, it's really hard to maintain. You want to start doing the same thing, but for your time wasters. In the same way that there is nothing bad about having a little treat, there is nothing bad about hopping on TikTok or going and watch TV. Little treats are good, they are okay, they create delight in your life. But just like you can learn to recognize when you are full of little treats or when little treats are making you feel bad, you can learn to recognize when you are full of TikTok or social media and learn how to stop there. And if you overdo it with your time wasters, that's fine. Just become really mindful of how it feels to overdo it. Mostly when I'm talking about time wasters in this video, I am talking about your classic dopamine machine. And if that's where you waste most of your time, it is still a good idea to do a month or so of cutting those dopamine machines out. That way it's a lot easier to become mindful of when the urge to use them arises, and you can rewire your brain a little more easily. So to implement this, as you are using your time wasters, ask yourself, how do I feel right now? And keep on asking that, like, as you use it. Are you feeling delighted and happy? How long does that feeling last for? At what point do you start feeling sluggish or self-focused in an unhelpful way? How does it feel to feel sluggish and self-focused? Another helpful question that I like to ask is this a 7 out of 10? And I mean that in terms of satisfaction and enjoyment. Are you having a 7 out of 10 time? When you could acknowledge in your head, hey, this is not a 7 out of 10, or I am not enjoying myself, it's a lot easier to put down your phone or exit out of the TV show. After you've watched this video, you've created a ton of free time. You might be like, I want some brain buzzy, enjoyable activities to fill my time with, in which case I'd like to recommend Skillshare, the largest online learning community for creatives. Skillshare has classes on quite literally everything that is interesting. Productivity, illustration, graphic design, creative writing, web development. Whether you want to learn to draw really pretty flowers like these ones that I learned to draw from Skillshare, or you want to start your own business with an entrepreneurship class or a marketing class, or you want to up-level for the job that you're in with the UI UX classes or the social media classes, Skillshare has something for you. I recently was watching the Notion masterclass, Maximize Your Productivity and Organization by Ali Abdal, who I'm sure a lot of you know. This class covers the fundamentals of getting started, which I am already across, but then it has all of these examples of people's work workspaces. From Ali Abdaal himself to August Bradley, Thomas Frank, there are a bunch of examples to get you inspired and get you thinking about how you want to design your own Notion and organize your own life. And it's always a learn by doing situation when it comes to Skillshare. All of the classes are designed so that you are doing things. You're not just listening and nodding your head, you're actually putting things into practice. The first people to click the link in my description will get 1 month free of Skillshare. Click that link down in the description below to get your 1 month for free of Skillshare. Step number 2. So as we know, when you pick up your phone instead of doing, why did I do that? As we know, when you pick up your phone instead of doing the thing that you want to be doing, your brain is acting out of a weird form of self-protection. It's trying to soothe you in its own way. But usually this is done really mindlessly. Like, you are not consciously thinking, ooh, I'm noticing a feeling of stress right now. I'm gonna pick up my phone to soothe that stress. That thought doesn't occur to you. It happens unconsciously. And it's very hard to break habits that are done totally unconsciously. So how do you make the unconscious conscious? By keeping a log of your triggers. Once again, this is something I have been doing with my eating patterns in the last few weeks, and you wouldn't believe my revelations. You would. Actually, they're like really obvious. But until the last few weeks, I had no idea how often I would walk to the kitchen as soon as I felt like I was hitting a wall with my work, or I felt bored of the work that I was doing. Those revelations are gonna sound really obvious to you. Like, of course, a lot of people do that. But to me, this was news. Those were completely unconscious triggers for me. And until I got them out into the open, there was nothing I could do about them. Now that I know they exist, when they arise, I can notice them and I can actually manage them in better ways than going and getting a snack that makes me feel a little bit ill. And that's exactly what you need to do with your time-wasting behaviors. What are your triggers that make you want to reach for a device? You've got to be so mindful to actually notice these because they are so unconscious right now. Step number 3. So British author Mark Forster talks about pull mode and push mode. Some goals and tasks feel like you are fully in push mode. You are pushing something heavy up a hill, like it's tough work. Versus pull mode, where you're just like casually walking downhill. It feels easy. You have so much energy and motivation towards those pull goals that they kind of pull you along. Not that they're not work, but you're just so filled with excitement and energy that you work on them without having to try. When you have pull goals that exist in your life, it is much easier to not waste time because you have these goals that feel so important and you'd rather spend time on them than doing other things. For example, when I first started YouTube, getting myself to work on YouTube was so easy. I just spent my spare time doing it for fun. And now I'm a full-time content creator. We love to see it. That's the power of a pull goal. So how do you actually create pull goals? Well, I do have an entire ebook/workbook coming out very soon, The Life Map, which I 100% think that you should buy, but here is one idea. The thing is that most goals actually start out as pull goals and they slowly turn into push goals. But the reason they turn into push goals is because they become shoulds. I'm very anti-shoulds these days, if you haven't noticed. And that's because when something is a should, your mind sees it as a chore. For a lot of us, as soon as something messes with our sense of freedom and our sense of choice, we're like, no thank you. Obviously, part of a pull goal is having a really strong vision that you're excited about. But another way to counteract push mode and lean into pull mode is what I call screw it energy. It's the clean version because we're on YouTube. This is my favorite kind of energy to embody, but it also kind of takes work to lean into this energy. Like, it doesn't come naturally. You have to self-talk your way into it. You want to say things to yourself like, screw it, I'm going to do this in a way that feels good for me. Screw it, I'm going to have fun with this. Screw it, I am going to treat this like an experiment. There is something about this energy that just gives you this sense of freedom, this sense of play that helps you to drop your shoulds and lean into pull mode. So long as the goal that you're working towards is actually something you're interested in the first place. That's a precursor. Step number 4. So maybe you're kind of in the camp where you're like, yeah, I have things that I want to be doing and I will start doing them, but then I end up like this. Once again, this is probably a bit of an emotional regulation problem. You get bored, so you end up grabbing for your dopamine machine of choice. Thankfully, most emotional regulation habits, they're really just sticky habits. They are mental habits that you can break just like any other habit. And one way that you can do this is by using a practice given to us by the Mindfulness for Academic Success program. They actually call this study meditation or problem solving meditation. So if you're like, I've never been able to sit still and meditate for a long period of time, this might be more your bag. As you work on any task, observe yourself as you get distracted. As soon as you notice that your attention has wandered, write down your distraction on a piece of paper and then move straight back to the task that you were working on. The key to this is to think of it as a form of attention training, just like meditation. Anyone can do this. this. Even if you do struggle with something like ADHD, this is still something that you can engage in. It's still possible for you to train your attention. You just have a different starting point than other people. Keep that in mind. So you need to make sure you're coming at this from a place of non-judgment and self-compassion. It has the same or a very similar value as meditation does, but instead of sitting in silence, noticing your mind as it wanders and then going back to your breath, you're going back to the task that you were working on. Research has shown that this is a successful way to improve academic performance. It also tends to result in improved emotional well-being as people recognize that they can just train their awareness and that a lot of their distractions and time-wasting habits are really just mental habits that they have the capacity to reduce and lessen. And step number 5. I actually sent my sister this meme from Reductress, one of my favorite Instagram pages, the other day. Nice, this woman's schedule just opened up because she forgot what she needed to do today. And a lot of time wasting really does carry that energy. We get home, we're like, nice, I have nothing to do. I'm going to doom scroll. But actually we have all these goals and all these projects that we said that we wanted to work on. We have all these habits that we were like, yeah, I really want to do that. But they've temporarily left our brain as soon as we sit on the couch. Which is why this step is all about getting really specific about what your priorities are. And it's one thing to be clear on the idea of like, oh, I want to read more books in my spare time, or I want to journal instead of wasting my time. Those are sort of nice ideas, but a much better way to approach it is being specific about what you want to journal. So do you have like a journaling technique that I've mentioned in my videos that you're like, yes, that's what I want to do with my time, or in some book you've read, doesn't have to be me? Or do you have specific books that you're excited about reading? If you want to swap your scrolling habit for something healthier, you want to have something that's actually exciting you, that you want to go back to. It could be a Skillshare class as well. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. It's just too generic to be like, I want to read more. Find a book you're excited about, or maybe like an exciting recipe that you want to cook. I'm just throwing darts at a board. I don't know what you actually want to do with your spare time, but you get what I mean. A good way to remind yourself of these priorities is get yourself an app like Screen Zen, and in the little custom message, list the 3 priorities that you have. That way, every time you open up a time-wasting app, you can see those 3 priorities. Watching this video is kind of like step 1. There may be other underlying reasons why you are wasting your time. For example, you might be a little low on energy, and that's something you can do things about. I created a video recently called How to Stop Feeling Low Energy All the Time. I'm gonna have a link to that on the screen. It might be a good next step if you've watched this video and you're like, actually, I think it's an energy problem. I'll also have that link down below. Be sure to click the Skillshare link down in my description below. I appreciate you so much, and I'll see you soon.